Good morning, everyone. We're continuing here in the Horowitz NIDCHEI YISRAEL, and he's speaking about why it is that so many of these Yidden who departed from Europe and ended up on foreign soil, why it is that they began straying from Yiddishkeit in a pretty rapid way of assimilation and departure from the Torah that they knew all their lives. There is a third reason why it happens. And this is maybe the worst and the greatest mistake that the people make. And that's because they look around and they see every day. Many people, their acquaintances and their friends, and they see people from the old country. Hey, look, there's Yankel from Pinsk. And there's Mati from Radin, and there's Rochela all the way from Hungary. Look, they would see all these people, and they would see Shekiyom Mitzvah Torah Hefker Beineim, and they would say, "Wow, look, Yankala! I just saw him walk into a non-kosher restaurant, and look at that Mati! I saw him driving on Shabbos, and there's Rochela. She stopped covering her hair; she's no longer tznius, and so on and so forth." They would see all of these Yidden who were devout Jews before they came to America, whichever country they were in, and it's clear to the Jew that now arrived from the old country that it's a different world over here. Things don't go the same. Look how easy, and they seem to be happy. They're smiling. They have nice clothes on. This one has a car. This one has an apartment. This one is even buying a house. This one has a good job over there. Their kids look happy. They have bikes that they're riding. Of course, they're riding it on Shabbos, but it doesn't matter. They're riding their bikes. They have nice shoes. There seems to be plenty of food on the table. They look a little svelte. They look like they have some extra meat on their bones. From what I remember Yankel, he was skinny as a rail over there in Pinsk. I put on some weight over here. Must be that things are going well. So they see that the Torah has become what's called hefker. It's like it's meaningless and worthless in their eyes, in the eyes of the people that are already here in America who have made the departure from Yiddishkeit. V'alkein, and therefore, hayetza mesisai loimer, the Yetzirah comes along and tricks and persuades the person and says, I'm not by myself in this. I'm not the only one who's not going to keep Shabbos so much anymore. I'm not the only one who's going to be lax in my kashrus. I'm not the only one who's gonna not put on my tefillin, and it's not only going to be me. Look at all these other people that are here, and they've been here before me, and they seem to be doing just fine. Says the Yetzirah to the person that whatever punishment is going to happen to these people, so it will also happen to me. And in the meantime, I see them doing just fine and dandy in the way that they are. Says the Horowitz, and we're going to see tomorrow a very beautiful mashal that he's going to use to illustrate what this means. But the Horowitz is saying that misery loves company. And people think that since that other people are doing these averas, and other people have degraded the Torah, and other people are not keeping mitzvahs carefully, so what's the big deal if I do the same thing? We'll be together in this. Many years ago, I met a Yid whose family came from Europe, and they ended up, if I'm not mistaken, in Oklahoma. Oklahoma, of all places. He had a Yid that's coming from somewhere in Poland, wherever he might have been from. He ended up in Oklahoma. And he said over that his parents said that when they arrived in Oklahoma, they saw shocking things. And that was that there were Yidden that were from the biggest Talmidei Chachamim in Europe. And he said they were so big, they could put the Gedolei Yisrael of our generation in their back pocket. Now, what does that mean? I'm talking a story that goes over 30-something years ago. The Gedolim of that generation was almost Stipler, was Rav Shach, was Rav Eliashiv, was Rav Scheinberg. These were giants of Torah, the Briskara, the giants. And he said these people that were coming from Europe, they were so big in Torah, they could put the Gedolei Yisrael in their back pockets, However, when this fellow's family arrived in Oklahoma, what did they see? They saw that these Chashiva Rabbanim, they were walking around without beards. And when they realized they're not only walking around without beards, they're not keeping mitzvahs anymore, and they're not learning Torah anymore, and they're not keeping Shabbos anymore. And that was the pressures of the world, and people were doing it. He said, to his parents' credit, they remained strong and firm in their Yiddishkeit, and they were zeicher. Their son was living in Yerushalayim at the time. He was an older man. He was a Talmud Chochem. He had a base midrash. He sat and he learned. He was a chashva person. And that's because they had the wherewithal to stay strong. Says the Chavetz Chaim, one of the weaknesses or one of the downfalls of the Yidden is when we get weak, when we take into account the mistakes of others and think, therefore, if we just follow in their footsteps, what's the big deal? It is a big deal, says the Chavetz Chaim, and tomorrow Mitzvah Hashem will see the mashal that will describe that. All the best.